Well, today we address the last excerpt from the first letter of Peter. And then next week we get into 2 Peter. So the 2 letters of Peter. But we're looking at the culmination of what the theme is with Peter. So that's what we're looking at today. And then, of course, you have the weekend. Sunday, you're going to be celebrating Trinity Sunday. And that's one of my favorite days as far as for our current time. I always preach on roughly the same thing. I even did a video out of it where I did my first major special effect. Really enjoyed doing that one. Where I had to, maybe I can talk about that a little later, but I had to show a teapot floating in space because that was one of the arguments against God that Bertrand Russell used to give, and so did Richard Dawkins, that, you can believe there's a teapot floating between, I think it's some like floating between the Earth and Mars, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's really there. So I had to do something, a special effect where I made it look like there was a teapot floating in space and with a green screen. And actually I used a neti pot. Someone picked up on that. I used a neti pot. Said, that's not a teapot, that's a neti pot. Because I didn't have a teapot. So in any case, that's where I got it. So anyway, Trinity Sunday is a powerful Sunday for our scientific times because Trinity Sunday helps us to realize that the universe is bigger than our ability to understand it. And if you happen to attend Mass at the Boston Medical Center South on either Saturday afternoon at 4 or Sunday morning at 8:30, that's in Brockton, Massachusetts, you will hear that particular homily. But we're looking at the very last letter, the very last excerpt from the first letter of Peter. And remember what I told you what the theme was. The theme was always choosing Christ and turning away from the world, meaning not the world in general, but turning away from the ideas and philosophies and aspirations and everything else that are rooted in the world and seek all that is rooted in Christ. And what Peter is talking about today, which is a very real aspect that we all understand, is that if you choose to follow Christ, you may experience suffering. You may experience suffering anyway. We all know that. But you may experience suffering related to the fact that you're choosing to follow Christ. And that's part of what leads you to experience the glory of God, because you're making a choice even though you experience some form of resistance in the form of suffering. So this is a major theme with Peter, because what is he saying? He's telling people, turn away from that which is the philosophy of the world and turn towards Christ. Now, why? Well, we can connect that with what I just was talking about, Trinity Sunday, because what our faith in Christ actually teaches us is that there is a whole new understanding of what it means to be a human being. Seek that understanding, and the other is what we originally believed were older and now incorrect understandings. And this is really what is at the center of following the gospel. This is one of the reasons why I'm often criticizing morality as the only thing you teach in faith, because morality, more or less, is the product of living your faith, but the goal of living your faith is coming to a deeper, is the wisdom of God, coming to a deeper understanding of who we truly are as human beings, and that's why we live the moral life. Do you understand that? And this is the aspect here. That's why you live the moral life. There's interesting X thing. I don't know what you call it, but from EWTN. You may or may not know I am not a fan of EWTN. And, I don't know if I've said that as directly before as I do now. I am not a fan of EWTN. So Raymond Arroyo put out a message on X. Let me read that for you. So anyway, this is from Raymond Arroyo's actual account on X, which is at symbol Raymond Arroyo, ARROYO, Raymond Arroyo. So that's how you can find this. And he has in quotes, sin is only mentioned 3 times in this document. How is this a church document? ? Close quote. So that's all a quote. And that's a statement. Now, he doesn't say who actually said this. He doesn't act to people who are part of his prayerful posse. And this is one of the issues that I have there because, again, what is the focus there? The focus is on avoiding sin. Hold on. Understand, our focus is choosing to follow Christ, which leads us to avoid sin. If you just avoid sin, you could be an atheist and avoid sin, technically, except for obviously getting into things like believing in God and everything else. But and that's the issue. Really, what this is, if we go back to the early preaching of St. Paul, we're going to find St. Paul talking about, and St. Peter and everyone, this is all about a whole new understanding of what it means to be a human being. And what sin does, sin distracts us from a deeper understanding. I mean, one of the, I get in this really bad habit, no, not a bad habit of sin. I get a really bad habit of when I come home from work, I'll sometimes sit down and I'll watch videos on YouTube. And it's a bad habit because I want to be reading something and I want to be more, but sometimes I'm just a little bit worn out from being at the hospital and I just come home and I'll do something mindless. I found this thing called Logan in Flight, which I enjoy, which is literally plane spotting. It's literally showing planes coming in and out of Logan. So anyway, but that's one of the things that I do. And understanding that, really, it's something that is best if I maybe do less of it and more reading and everything else. I'm in the midst of Great Expectations. I want to finish that and other things that I have. So, and also the writing I like to do. So all of these come together, and when we focus on sin, then it leads us to focus away from Christ, but the way to avoid that is to be focused on Christ and allow our understanding of who we are as his disciples, allow our understanding to transform us, which is what St. Paul calls us to do. And St. Paul in Romans 12, remember too, says to have a renewal of our mind. So that's what it's all about. I mean, think of this. When Peter and Paul first showed up, when the apostles first showed up, they didn't tell people to turn away from sin per se. They explained to them a whole new understanding. And how do I know that? It's right in the prologue of John and the prologue of 1 John. We're talking about the light that shines into darkness. It's this very deep understanding of whom they are following. Let's take a look at that. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and God was the Word. Remember, this is the Catholic Public Domain version. He was with God in the beginning, and all things were made through him, and nothing that was made was made without him. Life was in him, and life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. Those 5 verses really give us this whole new understanding of Christ. And when we look at those 5 verses, we see that what's being told here, this very deep new understanding of who we are and who God is. That's where our faith begins. And then you come to understand, well, sin leads us to focus on those things that are not of God and lead us to be mindful away from God. But look at the power that is there with understanding, wow, this is the light that shines into darkness, and the darkness does not overcome it. In this case, does not comprehend it. This is powerful. You see? So the focus is on turning away from sin. It's coming to follow and understand a deeper relationship with Christ. This is what that focus is, to really be rooted in Christ, to come to experience a truth that is so profound. And then we understand, oh, sin gets in the way. Sin leads us to turn away from this. This is like being on the edge of a profound discovery and choosing, well, yeah, this is really profound and everything, but I'd prefer to get drunk every night. There you go. Well, wait a minute. Do you understand how powerful this is? Yeah, but I really don't care. That's what sin does. And that's why our focus is on following Christ, because it's like, this is so profound. This is so wonderful. And this is something that the people who are always preaching against sin miss. And that's why you want to be careful of that. We're going to be back on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. Have you ever wanted to read the Bible but didn't know which readings to check out? Well, how about looking at the Church's daily readings? You can find them at the website of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. Just go to bible.usccb.org and click on the date that pops up on that page. There are other options on that page as well. That is bible.usccb.org, and click on the date and you will see the daily readings for your own prayer and study of the Bible. This is a prayerful tip from St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out. Patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. So we're back, and we're talking about this powerful reality in regards to the whole truth of what it is that we are coming to understand. So if you get lost in, no, we can only understand this and we're not supposed to look anywhere else, the whole bit, which is that whole focus on, you need to be focused just on avoiding sin, without realizing that our true focus is deepening our relationship with Christ, deepening our knowledge of Christ, deepening our knowledge of ourselves, as St. Augustine would teach, that when we understand that, now we have a deeper, more profound understanding of who we are, and at the same time of why to avoid sin. And there you go. One of the most profound teachings is in the book of Genesis. Now, I'm not a young earth creationist, but I will explain to you that Genesis, as Pope Benedict XVI said, Genesis is a prophecy. And prophecy isn't that it tells you the future. It explains to us. It is God speaking to us to teach us a more profound understanding of who we are. And one of the most profound things in Genesis is, in fact, the teaching of original sin. And, one of my favorite quotes is from Reinhold Niebuhr, who said, the only empirically provable doctrine of Christianity is original sin. And his point was really simple. You want to see proof that original sin is real? Just step outside your door and look around. There it is. You see it all the time. In the hospital the other day, there was a victim of a gunshot wound came in. There you go. It happens. It's real. there is original sin. And the obvious question is why? Why is there original sin? And our faith teaches the answer to that, but we can look further at that and start trying to understand this reality. What original sin is all about is trying to understand who is God. Is it me or is it God? Now, maybe in the past, the whole concept is who is God? Is it Molech, as we see in Jeremiah, or is it us? Jeremiah, these were the people turned away from God. They worship Molech. Is it Molech or is it God? What does Jesus say is the way you can discover who is speaking the truth? By their fruits you will know them. And there it is. So there was great injustice in following Molech, not the least of which was child sacrifice. And in Christianity, we want to see those who follow Christ will bear fruit, and that's what we're called to do. So the ultimate question is, who is God? And one of the big problems in our world today when it comes to Christianity is understanding who is God in our lives. Is it God, which is what Peter is teaching? Are you following Christ, or are you following someone else, including yourself? And if you aren't seeking to deepen your understanding and deepen your relationship with Christ, you may be following someone else, including yourself. And that's what sin is. Sin is, I know what's right. God doesn't. I don't believe in God. Therefore, I'm going to do what I think is right. Well, that assumes that you are smart enough to figure that out. It's kind of a little side story here, but sometimes people will come to me with not so much full-fledged conspiracy theories, but they'll talk about issues that maybe happen in their life. Maybe, for example, they got stopped by a police officer and something happened that the whole traffic stop went south, and they got maybe they got a worse ticket than they expected. Maybe even they got arrested or anything. And they'll come to me, and this is all hypothetical. I mean, this particular example does not exist, but I've had similar examples. And they'll say, well, the cop really did this because this is the reality, and this is what it means, and this is that, and and this is what he didn't like. He knew me, I assume, and the whole bit. And my response to that is, you're assuming he is that smart. Because if you look at this conspiracy theory you've come up with, or this conspiracy you've come up with, you'd have to think not only his motivation, but you have to think he was smart enough to figure that whole thing out. And I'm going to tell you that usually I find nobody is that smart. So yeah, that is a possibility, but I highly doubt it. And why don't we look at the reality of what actually happened? And the reality of what actually happened is you were going 40 miles an hour in a 35-mile-an-hour zone, so you were officially speeding. And maybe the police officer stopped you because he was watching you from the time you came out of your house 5 miles away and just showed up. But maybe at the same time, it is just exactly the way it was described, that you were going 40 miles an hour in 35-mile-an-hour zone, and he decided to stop you, and you argued with him, and things got worse. You see, but people will make that statement of, well, then this is what they did, and I know that and you go, you're assuming they're that smart. They're not that smart. And I always bring that out. Well, you take that whole thing, well, I don't have to believe in God, I can figure out everything on my own. Well, you're assuming you're that smart, and you're not. And that's the whole point of believing in God. And that's the whole point of deepening our understanding. And that's the whole point of focusing on this, is realizing that we want to come to understand who God is, and we deepen our understanding of God, and that deepening of understanding transforms us completely and changes us. But if we decide that, God doesn't exist, I'm smart enough on my own, or as a lot of people say who don't go to church, I'm good enough as I am, you're assuming that the criterion to make that decision is something that you are capable of thinking through, and you're not. This is where it all begins. This is the whole discussion that begins everything with this realization that God is God is infinite. And as we'll see on Sunday, God is beyond our understanding. And so he's telling us, come follow him. You will understand more and more as you go along. But as you understand, you will come to realize the truth that'll set you free. Pretty powerful stuff. But if you reject God, and one of the ways that you can reject God is to assume that you have religion all wrapped up. And that only comes with the believers. That's where you get the problem with people who will say things like, in this entire encyclical, the Pope only mentions sin 3 times, and therefore, how could this possibly be a church document? Well, first of all, it is a church document, and if you have arguments with that, then you miss the point. It is a church document, and, it's kind of like people will say to me, you're not preaching enough on abortion. Well, why do I have to preach a lot on abortion when people already know where the church stands on abortion? You're not preaching enough on abortion. You're not preaching enough on whatever. Well, why do I have to do that when people already know? You don't preach on things that people already know. That's called preaching to the choir. That doesn't make any sense. And I preach on abortion on an occasional basis, but it's not everything I preach constantly all the time, as some people do, as some priests do, because it doesn't make any sense. Why am I going to? There was a fascinating person who is, I don't think he ever was Catholic. Part of his family is Catholic, and he rejects faith, and I think he's an atheist. Or something along those lines. And one of the things he says is, who doesn't know the church is against abortion? He's not even Catholic. Who doesn't know the church is against abortion? So people, you don't preach enough about abortion. Well, you obviously know it's wrong. Why are you telling me to preach more on abortion when you obviously know that's preaching to the choir? That's wasting my time and their time when I need to preach more of following Christ, because the more we follow Christ, the more we turn away from sin. And there you go. We're going to talk more on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. We're here every single Monday through Friday. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to let people know about you're listening to this program. And we'll be back right after this from the Catholic Audio Media Podcast.
Did you know that Catholic TV offers free apps for both Android and iOS users? Visit the website catholictv.com or your app store to download this faith resource to your device.
Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out. Patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. So Monday, we're going to be talking about the second letter of Peter. We're going to be going through that and fascinating things there and look at the themes and everything else. And Monday, of course, is the 9th week of Ordinary Time, and so we're going to continue through Ordinary Time. And remember, there are 34 weeks of Ordinary Time, so at this point, there are, let me see if I can do my math right, 23 more weeks. Did I do that right? I think I did. No, I didn't. 25 more. I can't do math. I don't know what it is. I can't do math. I try. How did I get out of high school? And I did pretty well in high school, probably on writing as opposed to math. But in any case, we're going to be back on Monday. Have yourself a blessed weekend.
Yeah, you know the real is back. Father Carr Chaplain from the city of champions, dropping daily reflections coming straight from the field. The raw truth revealed for the strong-willed. It's the Greatest Act of Defiance podcast with your host Father Carr, a message built to last. The Greatest Act of Defiance podcast. That's right, the Greatest Act of Defiance. Word up. Word up. Word up.
The Catholic teaching in this podcast is reflected and presented as accurately as possible. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Archdiocese of Boston or any other institution.